topic for this week is interest rate options and other interest rate derivatives. We will learn about the notion of a derivative on an interest rate and particularly focus on our learning in pricing, valuation, and application of interest rate derivatives. A derivative on an interest rate may have its payoff tied to either a bond or an interest rate. So a derivative on an interest rate where the underlying is an interest rate will have its payoff determined by the interest rate, which may be LIBOR or any other rate relative to a fixed interest rate in the derivative contract. Similarly, a derivative contract where the underlying is a bond will have its payoff determined by the price of the bond relative to a fixed price in the contract. However, it must be noted that the price of the bond is sensitive to changes in interest rates, and therefore such a contract provides an indirect exposure to the interest rate risk compared to where the underlying is an interest rate itself. Now, there are some exceptions where this distinction between the underlying being a bond or an interest rate may not be relevant, particularly in the case of zero coupon bonds or discount instruments. Other than that, we will always be making this distinction between derivative on an interest rate and derivative on a bond. Now, in figure 13.1, the size of the FRAs and interest rate options market has been depicted over time, and though the data is a bit old, it still is reflecting the importance of interest rate derivatives over time as the market for these instruments have shown significant growth. Keep in mind that this data is quite old. Forward rate agreements are a form of interest rate derivatives, and basically an FRA or a forward rate agreement is a forward contract where the underlying is an interest rate. As we discussed, therefore an FRA provides us an exposure direct to the source of the risk, that is the interest rate. It is particularly useful for future borrowing and lending. For example, a borrower expects to borrow in 3 months' time. If interest rates right now, let's suppose LIBOR is 8%, there is a risk that it may increase in 3 months' time, and when the borrower borrows in 3 months' time, it may be 10, 12, or 14%, increasing his borrowing cost. On the contrary, for somebody who wants to lend in future, the risk is that the interest rate, that is LIBOR, may fall in future, which may result in lower interest income for the lender. Now, in such cases, we say that if you want to manage your risk as a borrower in future, you should enter into a forward contract as a buyer. That is, you should buy the forward rate agreement and should have a long position. On the contrary, for a lender, we say that the lender should enter into the forward agreement, that is the FRA, as a seller or a short position. Now, FRAs are status, for example, FRA 31, which means that the FRA expires in 30 days and involves lending or borrowing for 90 days. So this is the expiration period. 120 minus 30, that is 90 days, is the loan or period, or the lending or borrowing period for which the FRA has been agreed. Now let me just get rid of this. So I'll erase this. LIBOR is usually the underlying rate in forward rate agreements, which is used to calculate the gain or loss on the FRA at the end of the loan period, which is then discounted back to the expiration date, because unlike swaps, the gains or losses are settled at expiration for an FRA contract. Look at the formula here. Now we are comparing the LIBOR against the FRA rate, which is the agreed upon rate in the FRA agreement. And then we are multiplying this by M days, where M is the number of days of the loan, divided by 360, because we are using a 360 days year convention here. And as I told you, we then calculate the present value by dividing whatever the gain or the loss is at the end of the loan period by 1 plus the prevailing LIBOR on expiration day, and we are discounting it back to the expiration day. So again, we have M days here. Now here we have an example which is a long FRA with a 90-day LIBOR expiring in 30 days. So basically it's the same as I was giving you example of. It's a FRA 30 120. The notional principal is 20 million, and the agreed upon rate, or the FRA rate that is fixed in the contract, is 10%. So this rate will be compared against the prevailing LIBOR 30 days later in the market to calculate any gain or loss on the FRA. And remember, it's a long FRA, which indicates that it is used by a borrower, and we are assuming that the borrower is expecting to borrow in future, which makes it a risk management scenario. Of course, if we don't make that assumption, it can become purely speculative. Now, if we put in these inputs in the formula, this is what it shows. Now we need to get the LIBOR after 30 days to calculate any gain or loss on this contract. If we go to the next slide, here we are assuming, let's suppose if the LIBOR at expiration is 8%. Now, as a borrower, you fear that interest rates would rise in future, and you have entered into an FRA contract to borrow at 10% in 30 days. Now, you don't actually borrow or lend in the FRA, as these are cash settled contracts. So what happens is that you estimate or calculate your gain or loss on the FRA, and the gain or loss changes hand on the expiration date. So here, if interest rate are 8%, that means that as a borrower, if you are borrowing 30 days later, you will borrow in the spot market at a lower interest rate. So you will make a gain in the spot market. However, you will make a loss on the FRA, which you have used to hedge your risk. So in this case, your fixed borrowing rate in the FRA is 10% and the LIBOR 30 days later is 8%. So you lose 2% here. But this is per annum, as the borrowing period is for 90 days. So you just multiply this 2%, this 2% into 90 days divided by 360, and that actually makes the adjustment pro rata for the number of days. Then multiply this by the 20 million notional principal, which gives you 100,000 as the gain or loss. Of course, it's a loss in this case, that should be there at the end of the loan period, that is after 90 days. However, the contract, the FRA contract is expiring after 30 days. So you need to calculate the present value of that 100,000. For that you use the current prevailing LIBOR and the number of days that you are bringing it back, that is 90 days in this case. So it gives you 98,039. If I can draw the timeline here, it's like this. You see, this is the time where the contract is initiated, and this is where the contract is expiring, and this is where the loan period ends. So the gain or loss on the FRA here is equal to 100,000, and that is based on whatever you are calculating here in this phase. Now this 100,000 needs to be brought back here at its present value on the day of the contract expiration, as we discussed that the FRAs are cash settled contracts and you don't actually borrow or lend in an FRA, but whatever the gain or loss is settled at the expiration. So here on the expiration of the FRA, you can now estimate your gain or loss. So the gain or loss here estimated is 100,000, and because the FRA will be settled at expiration, you need to estimate its present value, and that is why we have this second term here as denominator, and it's the 8% LIBOR that is prevailing at the expiration day of the FRA. Now alternatively, if we assume that, let's suppose the LIBOR if the LIBOR on expiration is 12%, in that case the interest rates have increased rather than decreased, and since you have entered an FRA where you are borrowing at 10% and the comparative rate, that is LIBOR in this case, has gone up 12%, so you have made a gain here, and that is 2%. Again, this 2% multiplied by the loan period and this whole multiplied then by the notional principal gives you 100,000, which is a gain in this case because you are a long position in the FRA, and the interest rates have increased, so you will actually receive the gain here. And of course it will not be 100,000, it will be the present value of 100,000. The only difference, of course, will be that the 100,000 will be discounted at 12%, and this will give us $97,087. Now we look at pricing and valuation of FRAs. Suppose F is the fixed rate in the FRA, which the two parties agree to borrow and lend at the expiration of the FRA for the loan period. So if I draw the timeline here, this is the time the contract is initiated, this is the expiration, and this is the end of the loan period. So let's just call this period, this is, let's suppose, H. In the previous example we did, suppose it was 30, and then the period from H to the end of the loan period, let's call it M. And let's suppose the underlying here is the M day LIBOR rate. In our case it was the 90-day LIBOR rate. So H is the expiration of the contract, and MD rate is the underlying rate we will use for the payoff calculation. In the previous example we did, it was the 90-day LIBOR. Now L0H is the spot rate if somebody wants to borrow today for H number of days. In our previous example the expiration was 30 days. So if today somebody wants to borrow for 30 days, what is the interest rate prevailing? And then L0H plus M is the spot rate on day 0 for H plus M days, which means if today somebody wants to borrow for H plus M days, which is, in our previous example it was 120 days. So you see we have two spot rates here. One is if somebody wants to borrow today for H days, and the other is if somebody wants to borrow today for H plus M days. From our previous example, H days is 30 days and H plus M will be 120 days. Let's assume that the notional principal is $1. In order to find the fixed rate F, we must replicate an FRA. So we short a euro dollar maturing in H plus M days. Remember, H in our previous case was 30 days and M was 90, so we are talking about 120 days. At maturity, this short euro dollar will require a payment of 1 plus the fixed rate for M days in a 360 days year. This is a loan that can be paid off early or transferred to another party, so there is some flexibility in it. The long position is consisting of a euro dollar maturing in H days that pays $1. So if we look here, we have $1 short position and $1 long position. The $1 short position will mature here at H plus M days, and it will require us to make a payment of 1 plus F for M days out of 360 days year. And this $1 euro deposit will mature here after H days, and that will be paid as $1. There will be no interest paid or received on it. Remember, we are assuming even interest on this $1 short position to start from here to here, that is for 90 days. So to keep other things constant, there is no interest payment here and no interest payment here. So this $1 will mature to $1 value here. Now on day H, we are talking here again, if we just draw the line, this is where the contracts were initiated, minus $1 and plus $1, the positions, and then we have H here and H plus M here, and remember this is M. So we are now here at H. So on day H, we will have the $1 short position, this one, and the $1 euro deposit position. This $1 short euro deposit position, its value will be equal to the present value of what we owe here, discounted back to time h, that is day h, at the LIBOR or interest rate prevailing on h day. So you see, we owe this much here on h plus m day, and since we are here on day h, so we need to calculate the present value of that. So the present value of that is 1 plus FM 360. That is the future value that we owe at h plus m day. But since we want to estimate its value here on day h, so we will have 1 plus the interest rate prevailing on this day into 360. Now this M here is indicating that this is the spot rate that will be prevailing for the 90-day LIBOR period, that is the 90-day LIBOR 30 days from now. So this is basically, if I can write it here, is the spot rate. Let me just get rid of this line here. So this is the spot rate for M day. In other words, we can say in the example that we did previously, it is the spot LIBOR rate 30 days from now for 90 days. So it is the 90-day LIBOR's rate 30 days from now in the spot market. So we put a negative sign here, which indicates that this is the short position. So on day H, we have this as our liability. Now our asset will mature, which is a euro-dollar deposit of $1 we deposited on day naught here. So we will receive $1 here. So if you see here, this is our asset and this is our liability. So the present value of what we owe on H plus M days and the $1 euro deposit we have here. So that is the position on day H. Now we can further manipulate this if you look at it, and let's go to the next slide. So you see here we can rearrange what the expression here, this one, as this. Now it's readily doable because you see we have 1 minus F 1 plus FM 360 divided by 1 plus LH M 360. So and then we have the asset 1 here. So you can see we can readily do this like 1 plus LH M 360. We take this as common, and then we can have 1 plus LH M 360 minus 1 plus F 360. So 1 minus 1 crosses with plus 1, and we are left with LHM M360 and FM360. Because M360 is common, so we have taken that out and we are left with LHM minus F. We have taken that in parentheses, and the denominator remains the same. Now, looking at this, it appears that this is an equivalent portfolio for an FRA. And how can we say that? So we can have a look at the FRA with rate prevailing in the spot for M days, okay, and then we have the forward rate, the fixed rate in the FRA for M over 360, and because these both have the same denominator, the same multiplier, that is M360, so we've taken this out, and then if we just divide this by 1 plus the LIBOR rate prevailing 30 days later, that is basically 30 days later for 90 days or M days, M360. This implies that the replicating portfolio consisting of a short and long euro-dollar position is equivalent to the payoff from an FRA. This is exactly the same expression we used in our numerical example, with the exception that we are not putting in numbers and also have excluded the notional principal. For the derivation of the fixed rate, that is the FRA rate, let's look at the timeline. So let's suppose this is the time of the FRA initiation, this is the expiration period H, and this is the loan period end, which we denote by H plus M days. If somebody wants to borrow today for H days, the spot rate is L not H. And if somebody wants to borrow for H plus M days, the spot rate is L not H plus M. Now, let's suppose there are two borrowers. Borrower 1 wants to borrow for H days, okay, at L not H, and let's make it H 360, and we put a 1, so we're assuming that he or she is borrowing £1 or $1, and then plans to borrow, because he or she will borrow for H days, so the loan will mature here and they have to borrow again for M period. So let's suppose the borrower here has a strategy where he or she will borrow for 30 days or H days and then will return the loan, and let's suppose will borrow again. But there is uncertainty because the interest rate here may increase or decrease. So they may enter into a forward contract today, you see here, where the borrowing rate is fixed for this day. For M days. Now, what we are saying is that borrower 1 would borrow in the spot market for 30 days or H days, and then will enter into a forward contract, that is an FRA, where he or she will be borrowing again for M days at the forward rate fixed at time t naught. So it doesn't mean that this rate is not known till this point. It means we can determine this rate here. But how would we know that rate? So we will just put F here, and this will be for M over 360 days. So this is the strategy of borrower 1, borrowing for H days and then borrowing for M days. Borrowing for H days in the spot market and then borrowing for M days in the forward market using FRAs. Now, borrower 2, on the other hand, borrows for H plus M days in one go. So 1 plus the spot rate for H plus M days and H plus M divided by 360. So borrower 2 is only using the spot market for borrowing. Now, why is this equal sign here? And we will have to go to the basics, and that is that to avoid arbitrage, the strategy from borrower 1 and borrower 2 should have the same effective borrowing cost. Otherwise, there will be arbitrage. Now, this equation is involving two markets with three transactions. One is the spot market and the other is the forward market, and there are two transactions in the spot market and one is for the forward market. But of course, this forward market transaction is also done today. The condition, as we said, that the effective borrowing rate for borrower 1 and borrower 2 must be the same. Now, if we look at this, it's an equation. So we already know what the spot rate is for H days and what the spot rate is for H plus M days. So we want to know the forward rate for borrowing for M days, H days from now. In other words, we are interested in determining what will be the forward rate to borrow 30 days from now for 90 days. And this is based on the yield curve theory, and we want to avoid arbitrage. So to get the forward rate, we can easily manipulate this equation and get the value. So we can write it like this: 1 plus the forward rate for M days M over 360 is equal to one plus L naught divided by, so we take this term now to the other side of the equation, so that will be 1 plus L naught H divided by 360. So we can further simplify it as Fm is equal to one plus L naught H plus M divided by 1 plus L naught H 360 whatever you get from here. So multiply that by 360 divided by M. So this is what is our model or formula for getting the forward rate. Okay, so this explains the derivation of the forward rate, that is the FRA fixed rate, to be used in the valuation as well as calculations related to forward rate agreements. This is what we call the price of an FRA. So the fixed rate that we get from this formula here is what we call the price of the FRA. Effectively, this is the forward rate from the LIBOR term structure, and we have used the short-term H and the long-term H plus M interest rate to bootstrap the forward rate for M days, H days from now. Now we will have a look at table 13.1 for an example of how this is done. So here we have this example, and it states that to solve for the rate on a 30-day FRA in which the underlying is a 90-day LIBOR, we have H equal to 30 days and M equal to 90 days. Thus, we need the spot LIBOR for 30 days and the spot LIBOR for 120 days. The 30th and the 120th day LIBOR spot rates are given here, 11% and 10.32%. Just to give you an idea, this indicates a downward sloping yield curve. Now, using these rates, putting them into the formula, the forward rate is 10%. This is how easy it becomes once you have derived the forward rate formula. To determine the value of the FRA during its life, we just refer back to the replicating portfolio transactions, the euro dollar long position and the euro dollar short position. If we value those two positions using the spot rates prevailing after G days, we can then multiply that by the notional value to get the value of the forward rate agreement. Now don't be confused by this formula. It's as simple. Here we are calculating the value of the $1 euro deposit, which is our asset, and we are doing it at the rate prevailing at day G after the contract has been initiated, and the number of days left in the contract is now also equal to H minus G, which in this case, for example, H was 30 and G could be 10 days or 20 days. We will see that in our example that follows. And this is the short position of the €1 dollar, and you see again we are using the interest rate prevailing at that time because the time has passed 10 or 20 days or 15 days, and we have to include the new spot rates for the valuation. So let's have a look at this example in table 13.2. So here we have the same FRA as we priced it in table 13.1, and it's now 20 days into its life with 10 days remaining. Thus G is equal to 20 and H is equal to 30, and H plus M is equal to 120. So we shall need the term structure for H minus G because now the 20 days have gone, so the interest rates have changed. So what are the current interest rates that we need? So we need the interest rate for the remaining 10 days or till the FRA will expire, because 20 days have already passed, so only 10 days are left. So we need the spot LIBOR rate for 10 days, and that is given to us here 10.55%. And then because now we have 20 days less, so H plus M minus G, so that is 30 plus 90 and minus 20, so 100 days are left now. So for 100 days the spot LIBOR rate is 10.15%. so using these two rates in the formula, we value the $1 euro deposit and the $1 euro loan, and multiply whatever we get from here into the notional principal, and we get the value of the forward contract equal to 3,697. Typical applications of FRA are for borrowers and lenders who are expected to borrow or lend on a single future date. So for example, a borrower may expect to be borrowing in 45 days from now and is exposed to the risk of increase in interest rates. Similarly, a lender may be expecting to lend 30 days from now and therefore is exposed to the risk of a fall in interest rates. In table 13.3, we have a scenario where a firm expects to borrow 20 million 30 days from now, and it will be borrowing this 20 million at the 90-day LIBOR prevailing at that time, plus 100 basis points. So there is a spread of 1% over the LIBOR rate. The loan will be paid back at the end of the loan period and will include both principal and interest. There is a risk that the interest rate may rise in the next 30 days, and that will make the borrowing expensive for the firm. So the firm is facing the risk of a rise in interest rate over the next 30 days. Now, to hedge this risk, the company wants to lock in a rate using the forward rate agreement, and this forward rate agreement will be a contract for 30 days expiration involving borrowing for 90 days. 30 days from now. So it will be an FRA 3120. The firm enters into an FRA that expires in 30 days, where the underlying is the 90-day LIBOR and the FRA fixed rate is 10%. The interest on the loan and the FRA is based on the factor 90 over 360, and that is basically the 90-day loan period divided by the 360 days year. And the outcome for this hedge has been listed in the table here for a range of LIBOR rates assumed on day 30, ranging from 6% to 14%. So we see that because it's a long position, so when interest rates are low, there is a loss on the FRA, and when interest rates are high, there is a gain on FRA. And as we know, we want to protect ourselves against the rise in interest rates when we go long in FRA. So we see here that when the interest rates are high, the long position in the FRA is making up a gain. When the interest rate are low, we see here that the FRA is giving us a loss. So this is offset by the spot borrowing. So when interest rates are low, though we lose money in the FRA, this is offset by the low borrowing cost in the spot market. On the other hand, when we make a gain in the FRA, this is offset by the high borrowing cost in the spot market, because we borrow the loan at high interest rates. So this is how the hedge is working. And if we look at this effective rate on the loan, we see no matter what happens, if the interest rates here go up or go down in 30 days, we have locked in this fixed rate here, 11.63%. And this can be compared against the effective rate without the FRA. So if you don't enter into the FRA agreement, this is exactly what will be the cost of the loan. So at lower rate, you will be paying lower interest rate, but then you are exposed to paying higher interest rate if you are not hedged using the FRA. So let's have a look at an example here to understand how the payoffs have been calculated, particularly the effective interest rate of 11.63%. So the notional principal or the value of the loan, to be correct, let me just go there, and let me erase this. So the loan sorry for this. So the loan is 20 million, and the fixed rate we have in the FRA is set at 10%, and the LIBOR, let's suppose we take the first rate is 6%, and then the M, which is the loan period, is 90 days. So the gain or loss from the FRA will be equal to 20 million, the loan amount, multiplied into what we have here is the 6% LIBOR minus the 10% fixed FRA rate, and then 90 divided by 360, that is the loan period, divided by 1 plus the 6% LIBOR in the market, multiplied into 90 divided by 360. 60. So if we solve this, the overall loss from the FRA, because the interest rates have gone down, is 197,044. So this is the loss from the FRA. Now, whenever there is a loss, it is assumed for the calculation of effective rate that the company will borrow not only the original loan amount, which is 20 million in this case, but also the 197 and 44 in loss from the FRA, because to settle the FRA in cash, it will need to give 197,044 to the counterparty. So the borrowing needs of the firm would go up from 20 million to 20.197044 million. So this is assumed to be the amount borrowed, which includes the loss on the FRA, which needs to be paid to the counterparty in the FRA. Now, we know that the firm has lost in the FRA, and this is a loss from the forward market. Now, what happens in the spot is that because interest rates have gone down, the company will be able to borrow at a low rate. So we can say the borrowing rate here, it will be equal to the current market rate after 30 days is 6% plus 1%. Plus 1%, so this is 7%. The 1% is the 100 basis point spread, and this is the LIBOR prevailing for 90 days after 30 days when the hedge is lifted. So though the company has suffered a loss in the forward market, that is the forward rate agreement, the spot market will benefit the company because the lower interest rate will enable it to borrow at a lower rate. So 90 days later, you see, if I look at the timeline here, this is 30 days and this is now 90. I'll just put 120 days here. That is the, so the company will borrow here at 7%. How much? 20.197044 million. So how much it needs to pay back here? So that will be principal plus interest, and this will be calculated as the amount borrowed on day 30, which is 20.197044 million, multiplied into 1 plus 7% into 90 divided by 360. That is the time period for which it is borrowed. So 90 days later, the company will have to pay back 20.05544. It will be 5504492. Let me just make it a bit neat. Take this out. So it will be 25,50492 million. Now, if we want to calculate the effective rate on the loan, we will have to divide 20 we will have to divide 20,550,492 million, 20.5504492 million by 20 million, and raised to the power 365 divided by 90, and minus 1. Now there are two things that you must be careful here about when you calculate the effective return for the loan. First, that you don't need to divide this by 20.197044. The effective borrowing rate will be calculated based on the original loan amount here, that is 20 million. And the second thing that you have to be careful is because it's effective rate, so you will always be using 365 here, not 360, and you don't multiply this, you raise it to the power 365 by 90. So these are two important points to note here. You don't do division here by this amount, you divide it by the original loan amount, and then when you raise it to the power, it will be not 360 but 365. If you solve this, the effective borrowing rate is around 11.6%. which is approximately close to what we have in the table. Now let's do another number where we get a gain rather than a loss. So let's try this. Let me insert a new slide here. So suppose we keep all the information from the previous slide and we just say that now let's suppose LIBOR is 14%. So in this case the gain or loss will be 20 million. That is the notional value of the FRA contract, and we now have 14% here and 10 here, and then we have the 90 over 360 here, 1 plus 14% into let's make 90 divided by 360. So if, this will give us 193,237 dollars as a gain approximately on the FRA. Now this is a gain on an FRA. However, this also means that the spot interest rates have gone up, so the borrowing rate would also go up. So the borrowing rate in this case would now be 14%, the 90-day LIBOR prevailing 30 days later, plus the 1% spread. So the borrowing rate will increase to 15%. Now, the net loan amount will be adjusted or reduced by the amount of gain on the FRA. So the firm needed to borrow 20 million. And it received a gain of 193,237 from the FRA. So effectively, it should be borrowing $19 million, or in other words 19.866763 million. So when we had a loss, we saw that the loan amount was increased by that amount. Now in this case we have a gain, so we see that the loan amount is reduced by the amount of gain on the FRA. So this is the amount that the firm would be borrowing, not the 20 million. So 90 days later, the firm will have to return how much? So it will borrow this amount at 15%. So principal plus interest to the borrowed amount of 19.806,763 million multiplied into 1 plus 15% into 90 divided by 360, which is the loan period. So this should be equal to 15% multiplied into 0.25 plus 1 multiplied into 19.806,763. So it should be equal to 20 million or 20.549517. So this is the amount that will be returned after the 90 days loan period is over. Again, if we want to calculate the effective rate, so it will be effective rate is equal to 20.54517 divided by 20 million raised to 365 divided by 90 should be approximately around 11.6. So let me be exact, 20.54517 divided by 20 million. So and then raised to the power 4.06 minus 1. So if I just, it is 11.63%. Again, I have divided this by 20 million and I have used 365. Now if I go back to the table 13.3, we can see that I have verified this here and I have verified this. Of course there are some differences because of the rounding off, but that's how you can verify. Of course the second approach involves compounding the gain into future value, and you can also verify it alternatively, but I suggest that you use the method that I have described in the two examples because it is consistent with most of the books and resources that you will come across in the financial literature.